Coming up on a newscast, rocket strike in maternity clinic, a Holocaust memorial site, and near a TV tower in Kyiv. Russian military convoy continues its advance on Ukraine's capital as the death toll rises. President Joe Biden condemns Russia's invasion. He also pledged solidarity with the Ukrainian people and reiterated that Washington will not deploy troops to Ukraine. South Korea reports more than 200,000 new COVID-19 cases for the first time. With 96 more related fatalities, the death toll exceeds 8,200. Hello, welcome. I'm Daniel Che here to bring the latest. Let's begin with our top story. We start things off with the Ukraine crisis. Blasts are heard from key cities as Russian forces attack from several sides. Our Shiu is standing by on the line to give us the details. Shiu, do get us up to speed.
Almost a week into Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Moscow's forces have made major advances in border regions in the north, east, and south of the country. Russia has continued its attacks on Kyiv, with strikes hitting major landmarks in civilian areas. It's also scaled up the bombardment of Kharkiv, Ukraine's second-largest city in the northeast. Russian state media claimed on Wednesday that its forces have taken full control of the city of Kherson in the south, a strategically important city north of the Crimean Peninsula. But local authorities are still claiming the city is under Ukrainian control. In Ukraine's third-largest city, Odessa, authorities are currently looking into a possible Russian rocket or artillery fire on its airport. Russian forces have likely encircled several other cities, too. Meanwhile, a 64-kilometer-long Russian convoy of tanks and towed artillery is reportedly heading toward Kyiv.
And Ukraine's leader called Russia's attacks a blatant campaign of terror. What can you tell us about the reported details?
In Kharkiv on Tuesday local time, missiles struck an opera house, a concert hall, and government offices in Kharkiv's Freedom Square. The airstrike killed at least 10, according to local authorities. On Wednesday morning, Russian forces struck Kharkiv's regional police department and Kharkiv National University. Ukraine's President Zelensky has accused Russia of war crimes for its attack on the city and said Russia should stop its bombardment before any negotiations. Take a listen.
As for dialogue, I think yes. But stop bombarding people first and start negotiating afterwards.
In the capital, Kyiv, there was a strike on a TV tower, and according to Ukrainian officials, the strike killed 5 people. It also temporarily disabled Ukraine's central TV channels. The same strike damaged a Holocaust memorial site. Russian shelling also hit a private maternity ward near the city.
Well, as of now, do we have any idea about the number of casualties?
Yes, but the estimates vary widely. According to the UN, as of Tuesday, at least 136 people, including 13 children, have been killed in Ukraine since the invasion began last Thursday. And according to the spokesperson for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, another 400 civilians, including 26 children, have been injured. She added that those are only the casualties they were able to cross-check, and the real toll is likely to be much higher. In fact, Ukraine's Interior Ministry reported higher figures on Sunday, civilian deaths at 352 and injuries at more than 1,600. Meanwhile, neighboring countries are seeing an influx of refugees. According to the UN, more than 660,000 people have fled Ukraine so far, some of whom have described dire conditions back home. Take a listen.
But it was on the front line still. It was a bit dangerous, you know. I mean, it's Kyiv. Like, it's dangerous everywhere in there.
That's all I have for now. Back to you, Daniel.
All right, Shia, thank you for those updates. We appreciate it. Moving on, as Russia bombarded Kharkiv on Tuesday, civilians have been killed and children left injured. Over in Ukraine's capital, residents are spending nights in subway stations and underground shelters to avoid flying debris and bullets. Peeunji has the latest.
Russia's air and artillery attacks on Tuesday in Kharkiv left at least 11 people dead and 35 wounded, according to officials. The day after the attack, dead bodies were seen on the streets of Ukraine's second-largest city, and residents were seen helping emergency workers retrieve more bodies from damaged buildings.
They bombed the residential building, hit it with rockets. Many civilians died. I have videos of at least 4 dead people laying on the ground. There's a dead person laying next to us.
We are being shelled by Russians. We are all scared. Why us? We are just regular people.
The attack also smashed the windows of a local hospital and wounded children. The head of the hospital said the building's basement that served as a bomb shelter was also damaged because of shock waves.
Shockwaves destroyed everything. That's all I can say. There are wounded people. Some are severely wounded, including 2 children who have been taken to hospital.
In the capital city of Kyiv, residents have been spending the night in subway stations. Others have been sleeping in makeshift bomb shelters, such as underground car parks or in their basements. The city's officials had issued warnings that residents should seek shelter and take precautions to avoid flying debris and bullets. Still, residents are making the best out of the situation as war rages above ground.
It's really good atmosphere because it's really very, very warm people, so close to each other because we help each other.
According to Deutsche Welle, the city authorities extended the nighttime curfew on Tuesday. Instead of the 10 p.m. curfew, it now begins at 8 p.m. and lasts until 8 a.m. the next morning. People have been going to shelters before the curfew starts, and when the curfew ends, they rush back home to replenish their supplies. To buy food, they have to wait in extremely long lines in supermarkets. And already there is a shortage of medicine, bread, and other basic food in the city.
Nothing. We managed to get inside one supermarket and there was no bread, milk, or eggs. There was only water and sweets left.
The city officials have said they would deliver food to local stores, but Deutsche Welle reported on Wednesday that there was no bread, fresh fruit, or vegetables. It said that in many supermarkets, the only products available were cakes, pastries, tobacco, and alcohol. 배은지, Arirang News.
U.S. President Joe Biden's first State of Union address to Congress focused on the Ukraine crisis. The commander-in-chief called on Russian leader Vladimir Putin to stop the invasion and announce more sanctions on Moscow. Kim Dami shares with us his remarks.
President Biden said Tuesday in his first State of the Union address that the free world has banded together in response to the crisis in Ukraine, with EU members and other allies, including South Korea, holding Russian President Vladimir Putin accountable.
Throughout our history, we've learned this lesson. When dictators do not pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos. They keep moving.
Biden warned that Putin, in attempting to shake the foundations of the free world, has badly miscalculated and now faces a wall of strength he never imagined. He said Putin is more ostracized from the world than ever and announced more sanctions on Moscow, effective immediately as of the next day.
And tonight, I'm announcing that we will join our allies in closing off American airspace to all Russian flights, further isolating Russia and adding additional squeeze on their economy. He has no idea what's coming.
Biden then pledged to provide military, economic, and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine, including more than $1 billion in direct aid. But he also made it clear that U.S. forces are not going to engage in conflict with the Russian forces in Ukraine. China was also near the top of Biden's traditional address to Congress, where he pledged to win what he called the economic competition of the 21st century, saying it's, quote, never been a good bet to bet against the American people. Biden also laid out plans to tame the worst inflation in nearly 40 years, such as manufacturing cars and semiconductors locally instead of relying on foreign supply chains. Praising the country's fight against the pandemic, Biden said that COVID-19 need no longer control Americans' lives and pledged that his administration will continue to respond to new variants and secure treatment. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
At a UN human rights meeting, diplomats from around the world walked out of a speech by the Russian foreign minister to protest the invasion of Ukraine. The U.S. suggested kicking Moscow off the UN Human Rights Council. South Korea also expressed strong condemnation of the aggression. Yoon Jung-min has the details.
Scores of diplomats at the United Nations in Geneva walk out of a room in protest as Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov begins his video speech. Instead, at the UN Human Rights Council on Tuesday, the diplomats showed their solidarity against Russia's invasion of Ukraine by gathering outside of the room around the Ukraine's ambassador to the UN, who was holding her country's flag.
So we stay united here in Geneva, we stay united in New York, everywhere in the world. The world stands behind Ukrainians. They feel it and they will continue to resist and they will win.
U.S. State Secretary Antony Blinken suggested expelling Russia from its membership to the UN Human Rights Council.
One can reasonably ask whether a UN member state that tries to take over another UN member state while committing horrific human rights abuses and causing massive humanitarian suffering should be allowed to remain on this council.
At the council, South Korea's second vice foreign minister Choi Jong-mun said the Republic of Korea strongly condemns Russia's aggression, adding it's a clear violation of the UN Charter. He added that South Korea has voted in favor of convening an urgent debate on the human rights situation in Ukraine. In New York, South Korea's ambassador to the UN, Cho Hyun, also voiced criticism of Russia's invasion. At an emergency special session of the UN General Assembly, Cho added South Korea has joined the resolution demanding that Russian troops withdraw. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Leaders around the world are imposing an unprecedented array of sanctions on Moscow. The EU is excluding 7 Russian banks from the SWIFT messaging system. Kim Sung-min sheds light on the potential impact of these measures.
The EU announced on Tuesday that it is excluding 7 Russian banks from SWIFT, an international messaging service that connects thousands of financial institutions. That includes VTB, Russia's second largest bank by assets, and another big player, VEB, as well as 5 smaller ones. But one thing to notice here is the absence of Sberbank, the largest bank in Russia, and Gazprombank, which is a major player for oil and energy-related payments. The decision to spare some major banks comes as the West has been divided over the decision as to what extent the sanctions should be imposed, because the ban will hurt the West too.
Some Western countries are worried because if they froze Russia out of the SWIFT system, then a lot of their companies will not be able to receive payments from Russia. So those companies would get into possibly financial problems because they wouldn't get the money that they're owed from Russia.
South Korea has decided to join the efforts too. Following the step taken by the U.S., the South Korean government on Tuesday announced it would cut its transactions with 7 major banks in Russia, as well as banning its National Wealth Fund. South Korea has also pledged to follow the SWIFT ban once the list is finalized by the EU. So how will the Russian economy be affected by these sanctions? While some experts believe the Russian economy will contract at least 10%, there are others who forecast that the impact will be somewhat milder than expected, given that major sanctions have loopholes, like sparing important financial institutions as well as crucial sectors like oil and grain.
Sanctions are tough, but not that tough. Russian economy is, to a very large extent, is closed inside itself. So it works for itself, and it definitely needs and lacks external cooperation, but not to the extent of like 1/3 of the GDP.
The same economist assumes that most of the impact will be felt starting from the second quarter to cause a contraction of around 3% this year. Kim Sung-min, Arirang News.
The international sporting community is joining efforts to condemn and isolate Moscow. Russian teams and athletes are facing exclusion from major competitions, including the World Cup. Song Yoo-jin zooms in on this development.
In line with international efforts to isolate Russia from the global economy with biting sanctions, the sports community is stepping up efforts to sideline Russia and its ally Belarus from the playing field. The International Olympic Committee was the first to make a move. In a statement released on Monday, the IOC advised sports bodies to bar the participation of Russian and Belarusian athletes and officials, on top of its recommendation against holding any sporting events in the two countries. The IOC also decided to withdraw the Olympic order given to Russian President Vladimir Putin in 2001, citing his, quote, extremely grave violation of the Olympic truce. The situation is no different in football. The sports world governing body, FIFA, announced a joint decision with UEFA on Tuesday that it is suspending all Russian national and club teams from both FIFA and UEFA competitions until further notice. This means no World Cup for Russia's national team, and club side Spartak Moscow has been expelled from the UEFA Europa League. The team had been due to face RB Leipzig in the round of 16 on March 10th. The series of sports sanctions prompted sharp criticism from Moscow.
Our country has always adhered to the principle that sport is beyond politics, but we are constantly drawn into the politics because they understand the importance of sport in the lives of our Russian people.
Yet regardless of Russia's response, global sports bodies are ratcheting up their backlash against Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. In line with the IOC, a growing number of international sports federations, including those of skating, basketball, track and field, skiing, rugby, and tennis, have excluded Russian players as of Wednesday. Gymnastics, judo, and volleyball matches slated to take place in Russia have been cancelled as well. 송유진, Arirang News.
Former USFK chiefs say Pyongyang will become more reluctant to give up nuclear arms in light of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Citing unnamed commanders, the South Korea-U.S. Alliance Foundation said the regime might use this time as an opportunity for mischief and that Seoul and Washington should strengthen joint training and intel capabilities. They believe the reclusive state could learn from Russian cyber attacks and information warfare. But the former chiefs added Moscow's invasion of Ukraine would not directly affect the security of the peninsula. South Korea's daily COVID-19 tally reached a record high. The medical system is holding up, though, and grade schoolers are back in the classroom. As distancing rules have taken a toll on small businesses, the government may ease related measures further. Kim Bo-kyung brings the updates.
South Korea has reported 219,241 new COVID-19 infections in a single day, the first time that figure has topped 200,000. More than 820,000 people are isolating or being treated at home, and more than 50% of sick beds for critically ill patients are in use. When it comes to Seoul metropolitan city, it saw almost 47,000 new cases, which is a record high. The South Korean government said on Wednesday that although the country should not let its guard down, there is no need to worry.
We are fully prepared to fight the Omicron variant. We have revamped our prevention and medical systems to minimize the number of critically ill patients and deaths. We have secured more than 2,700 beds for severely ill patients, and our ICU occupancy rate is hovering at around 50%, while our fatality rate is being kept at a low level thanks to the country's high vaccination rate.
Amid the surge, most of the schools began the new semester on Wednesday. The ministry had previously announced a 2-week grace period from March 2nd to 11th, so schools themselves can decide whether to give lessons in person or online during that time. During the spring semester, schools will not penalize students for COVID-19 related absences and will require students to submit COVID-19 test results or confirmation documents from medical institutions if they cannot take midterm or final exams. Meanwhile, as the number of young children testing positive goes up, the government has designated specialist clinics to treat kids with COVID-19. The Health Ministry has worked with Korea Children's Hospital Association to designate 26 children's hospitals that run respiratory clinics, and it will offer 1,442 sickbeds for them. Regarding social distancing measures, the government is considering easing the measures as it sees any strengthening of the measures to be ineffective. Originally, social gathering caps of a maximum 6 people and 10 p.m. shutdown orders were to remain until March 13th. But as the fertility rate goes down and the damage to business owners mounts, the government might make changes as early as this Friday. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
South Koreans with COVID-19 can get out and vote for the next president. The Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasure Headquarters will allow patients and self-isolating individuals to step out of living quarters on the day of the election on March 9th and on March 5th for early voting. However, they can only go out after 5 p.m. and only for voting. Temporary polling stations will be set up and local health centers will send out a total of 6 messages before the day and the day of the voting to inform people with COVID-19 of the safety precautions. Just 2 days before the early voting period, but there's still no candidate with a clear lead, and the election victory could hinge on the voter turnout among candidates' respective supporters. Yu Young-eun tells us more.
In past presidential elections, 1 week before Election Day, it was usually possible to predict a winner. That's Wednesday for this election, the last chance to gauge the public sentiment as polls are banned from being published after Thursday ahead of early voting. However, the latest results show the outcome is still highly uncertain, as Lee Jae-myung of the ruling Democratic Party and Yoon Suk-yeol of the main opposition People Power Party are neck and neck with any lead coming within the margin of error. The race is tighter than ever as both candidates' ratings have gone up, with Liberal supporters seemingly banding together around Lee, while the breakdown of the Conservative bloc merger has given an extra push for Yoon, with Conservative supporters seemingly unifying on Yoon rather than further splitting. One of the areas deciding this highly unpredictable race will be the capital region, which together accounts for nearly 50% of voters and yet has no clear favorite. Also important will be candidates' ratings in their rival strongholds, which are currently higher than seen in the past. Lee stands at nearly 30% in the traditional conservative strongholds of Daegu and Gyeongsangbuk-do province in the southeast, while Yoon also about 25% in the liberal stronghold Jeolla region in the southwest. The goal in these areas is to prevent their rivals from taking a landslide victory. In terms of age, those in their 40s and 50s show a tendency toward Lee, while those in their 20s and over 60s favor Yoon. Those in their 30s are largely split between the two, making them a key voter segment. But after all, with daily infections to top 230,000 by Election Day, the key is the voter turnout of each age group. Some 75% say they will come out to vote despite infection, with the figure dropping to 58% among those in their 20s. To avoid losing potential votes, candidates are urging voters to participate in early voting on Friday and Saturday. Polls show more Liberal supporters will vote early than Conservatives. There's also a significant number of voters who haven't made up their minds yet, but will so in the next 2 days, with Wednesday's debate helping them make their decision. Lee Hyung-eun, Arirang News.
South Korea's overall industrial production was down in January, mainly on a slowdown in services caused by the resurgence of COVID-19. But for the first time since the start of the pandemic, private consumption declined at the same time. Here's Min Suk-hyun with a breakdown of the digits.
South Korea's overall industrial production in January saw its biggest on-month fall in 6 months. Data from Statistics Korea on Wednesday shows that the country's industrial output edged down 0.3% on month from a 1.3% gain in December. This marks the largest fall since July last year. The agency attributed the fall to slower production in the service industry due to the latest surge in COVID-19 cases. Retail sales, a barometer for consumer demand, also saw a steep fall of 1.9%, posting its biggest on-month decline in 18 months, led by dwindling demand for cars and clothes. The last time industrial output and retail sales both plunged was at the start of the pandemic in March 2020. Statistics Korea explained that the downturn in industrial output and retail sales was attributed to the previous month's high base effect.
The index in major indicators last month was quite high, so this month, although the figures were not that bad, they appear to have been relatively affected.
Meanwhile, facility investment rose 2.5% from a month earlier, following more investments in transportation equipment. Despite some flattering numbers in January, Statistics Korea believes that the economic recovery momentum remains intact. On a separate note, Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi also stressed that the country has extended its economic recovery despite the fast-spreading Omicron variant. But the minister did express concern over heightened economic uncertainties due to the Russia-Ukraine crisis. He said the government will actively monitor and manage both internal and external risks to mitigate any economic fallout. 민숙현, Arirang News.
Conditions will get milder tomorrow here in South Korea. Maximum temperatures will be in double figures for most regions, but keep in mind that wide temperature gaps of at least 10 degrees or more are expected. Places like Chuncheon, where temperatures will plummet to minus figures for the morning, will see a difference of 16 degrees. Make sure to dress in layers. With increase in temperatures, dust concentrations will also rise. Western central regions, including Seoul and Jeollabuk-do province, will see dust levels standing in the bad category. Areas of dense fog will also develop across inland regions. This may cause visibility to drop, so please drive with extra caution. The entire nation will be under sunshine for tomorrow. Seoul will start off at 0 degrees. And daytime highs will be 1 to 5 degrees higher than today. Seoul will get up to 10 degrees. Gwangju 16, Busan and Jeju will be reaching 15 degrees. Early spring-like conditions will continue for the time being. On Friday, central regions will see a mix of rain or snow. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.